Two North Idaho legislators have decided that it is time for their colleagues to join them in actually fulfilling a promise that many Republican legislators have long said that they would. They visit with constituents and they tell constituents that they're pro-life, but not a lot changes when it comes to abortion. And the two legislators have put together a bill that would essentially ban abortion in the state of Idaho. We'd say it'd be a good counterbalance to what has happened in places like New York State. We're at 7:35. It's 20. Joining us this morning is State Representative Heather Scott. She is from, as I mentioned, North Idaho. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And Representative, welcome back to our show.
Thank you. Good morning, Bill.
Right off the beginning, I read about this I think it was on an AP story last week, and I read it, and my initial response was, first of all, this is great, and I've talked to a lot of people in the local religious community who say this is great, but then I had that sinking feeling, and that is there are a lot of people who are going to say, well, maybe this bill needs to be reworked, or maybe, in other words, delay whatever they can, but do you have any confidence at least you're going to bring some of these people out and get them on record?
I have confidence in this language. It's been worked on by a lot of people, a lot of different groups. It's very concise, and it's very clear. And so, in the way that our code is set up, it's really helpful the way our code is set up with already calling a fetus a baby, a human. And so I have confidence in this language, and I truly believe this is just bigger than the bill. It's bigger than the people carrying it. It's going to be a God thing, and it's going to be a change in people's hearts that move this forward. And I think the timing is God's timing is unbelievable with what's going on back east.
If you have success with this and it would become Idaho law, obviously we're well aware that it could be challenged, I'm sure, by the ACLU or any other number of organizations, or Planned Parenthood, which makes money from this important practice. But I think our goal is that we'd welcome a challenge, wouldn't we?
I think I spent 2 hours with our Attorney General last Friday, and I think that some of his concerns is when this does get challenged by Planned Parenthood, they end up winning. They get their lawyers paid for. They get to use it as a marketing tool, and they get some more case law. And while I understand that, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep killing babies. And so we have to put all the hurdles aside and just go for it. That's kind of where I'm at. You said earlier, people are always expressing their concern. They need to be expressing their outrage. And I think when I start really getting into the language, when I realized our state law literally says a fetus is a baby, and we give an exemption for murder in our state law, I'm just like, I can't believe this. Idaho's just exempting people from murder. And that's what we're doing in our state. And even if you're not religious, that just seems crazy.
Well, you referenced what happened in back east, and I guess Virginia now is jumping on board, going to copy New York. And when you reference that, if nothing else, what they've done has drawn, I think, more attention to what you're attempting to do, and it's helping people make a decision, I would guess, about right and wrong.
You're right, Bill. Ultimately, it comes down to, do you really believe that a fetus is a baby? And if you do, why are you making exceptions when I hear a heartbeat, when it's 10 weeks, when it's 2 weeks? If it's a baby, it's a baby. So no exemptions. We don't need to exempt if we treat it like life. And that's been some of my frustrations. Is just, it is simple, it's clear, but it's just the way our society has said, well, abortion isn't murder. Yeah, it kind of is. So it's an intentional taking of a life.
We wanted to mention I was speaking with State Representative Heather Scott. We're at 17, and it's about 20 minutes away from 8 o'clock. And she's one of the co-sponsors of this bill, which is the Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act. Can you take a call? We've got a break in about 5 minutes, but we might squeeze in a few callers here.
Sure.
Okay, let's get to the phones. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with State Representative Heather Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, I see every so often when a murder case comes to trial and it happens to be the murder of a pregnant woman, the suspect is charged with 2 counts of murder, the woman and the baby. If we recognize the baby as a life for that purpose, then I think we're obligated to recognize the baby as a life for any other purpose involving that baby.
Well, Representative, your response to the caller.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That happened in my district in 2014. A gentleman killed a pregnant lady and he's in jail right now for 2 counts of murder, the fetus and the mother. And so what we're treating a fetus different if the woman has an abortion, and it's the same. It's still a life.
We have another caller looking to join us. And caller, you're up next. You're on KLIX with Representative Heather Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had the same point as the last gentleman. In cases of car accidents, it's treated the same way. So I don't understand how it can be two sides,
Yeah, well said. And in New York, they had to literally change the law because the law that they had said that if a pregnant woman was killed, it was a double homicide. In order to pass their abomination, they had to rewrite that part of the statute. I guess we have 2 Americas now, don't we? We have one that adheres to some traditional values, and the other we don't really know what to describe it as.
Well, it's heavily lobbied. I mean, the voices from the other side are so loud and so in your face and indoctrinating our kids. People start to believe that they define abortion as something that it's not, and abortion literally is murder. So I think we need to start redefining abortion and do it in a loving way so people understand that difference. Most people can understand if someone's getting charged with 2 counts of murder for killing a pregnant woman, why are we giving this exception over here?
When you reference this bill, and a lot of us, if we wanted to call our own legislators, I know what often happens. You get in office, and then the person on the other end, the secretarial pool, who's ever answering the phone, asks you for a bill number. And if you don't know the bill number, they really can't help you out. So specifically, if people call, they've got to likely cite the number. I mean, is there a number yet assigned to it?
Because we're changing the draft, it's going to have a different number. I think the best way to refer to this is the Idaho Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act, and I think that language is picked up. That's people know it as that. We're hoping to have a new draft by later this week. We wanted to add, there's always the question of, well, what about the I can't pronounce it, but the types of pregnancy, ectopic?
Yeah.
And, we put in, I don't want to say an exemption, but it's not an intentional, it's not the definition of abortion.
Well, can you hold on? We've got to take a short break. Can you stay with us until 8 o'clock?
Absolutely.
We've got more coming up with State Representative Heather Scott joining us this morning. And again, as she describes it is the Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act. So if you're speaking to your own legislators, refer to it as that for the time being so they'll know what you're talking about. Be exact with them. Otherwise, they'll try in some cases to maybe squeeze out of the argument or the debate with you on this. We're at 20. In the meantime, the Rush Morning Update is on the way, and weather, too, on KLIX. State Representative Heather Scott is joining us this morning on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're at 7:51, and it's 19. Bill Colley with you until 10 a.m. I do want to point out, too, Representative Scott was telling me during the break that she put up a video. I believe it's posted to her Facebook page, and this video has more than 20,000 hits now. people viewing this. So it does tell you that this is an important issue for a great many people in Idaho and probably even beyond. Representative Scott, you were also mentioning during the break that when you were looking through the Roe decision, the Supreme Court Roe decision, which dealt with Texas, Texas didn't at the time constitutionally point out that that baby in the womb was a human life. And your point is that we are different in that sense in Idaho, and that Texas just did not have that ability to make that argument when that case went to the court.
Yeah, if anyone wants to look it up, it's footnote 54 of the decision, and I'll just read a little bit of it. It says, when Texas urges that a fetus is entitled to the 14th Amendment protection of a person, it faces a dilemma. Neither in Texas nor in any other state are all abortions prohibited, despite broad, I can't read that word. So basically what they're saying is they didn't have it in code that really they were defining that life. They didn't, it was a hypocritical statement, basically, is what they said. So ours would not be hypocritical. We already say it's murder. So I don't know.
We've got a caller looking to join us. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air with State Representative Heather Scott on KLIX. Go ahead.
Good morning, Bill. Representative Scott. You know, the sad truth about this country is that we place more value on animals. Michael Vick went to prison for dogfighting. There have been over 18 million black babies murdered in this country, and we don't say a word. Imagine if I would have killed 18 million puppies, how bad would people be outraged? They'd lock me up in San Quentin, and who knows what would happen. That's the disgusting part, and I want to applaud this representative for having the backbone that many politicians who claim they are pro-life, and they use that to come and get votes every 4 years or wherever their election cycle comes due. That's the disgusting part about this. We need to take a stand. The good old book says, choose you this day who you will serve, brother. It doesn't say, wait in the wind and see which way the wind blows. You got to make a stand for what we believe. And if we truly believe life begins at conception and that's murder, we better get on the phone and let our representatives know exactly what we think. And if they don't vote for this bill, their head's on a chopping block come election time, period.
Well said.
That's the way it is.
I thank you.
It's disgusting. Thank you, Bill. You have a good day. I got to get back to work here. Bye-bye.
That was well said.
Well, he's right, though. We have a lot of people. In fact, I saw a story yesterday, headlined at Real Clear Politics, and it said that too often Republicans have used this issue to win Christian votes, and then they don't do a lot when it comes to legislating. And that likely is going to be an issue even among some of your colleagues.
It's really unfortunate. And even with lobby groups, you really got to get to the heart of the people running these groups. We have a well-known group that I've watched actually, because of a court decision, bring up a bill to make telemed abortion legal in Idaho. Again, because we passed it to make it illegal, but then because of the pressure from Planned Parenthood, they came back, that same pro-life group, and ran a bill to make it legal. I don't think people know that. You really need to, it's either life or it's not. We don't play around with it. God doesn't play around with sin. Sin is sin.
You aren't the first person to try to create one of these bills. I remember Dan Foreman did the same. Now he's no longer in the legislature, but he obviously made the effort, and it didn't go anywhere at the time. And I guess you have to just keep going back and knocking at that door.
Yes, and Bill, there's 3 other states carrying a very similar bill to this. Texas, Oklahoma, and Indiana all right now have a very, very similar bill. Hoping that somewhere we can get this moved forward.
Of the people, who are reacting, you pointed out to me during the break that most of the reaction you've gotten is positive. You're not hearing a lot of negative coming out of people.
Yeah.
Surprised?
Yes, very surprised. Because it seems like most people get very passionate and upset over this issue. But I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling it. Maybe they're strategizing. I don't know. But I do think people are waking up to the truth. And New York has vividly put that picture out there for us of the truth of where we're headed if we continue to not call life life.
In fact, New York, I think, probably has done more to set back that pro-choice cause than they don't realize it maybe yet, but maybe they've done more to set it back than anything else in the last 45 years.
Yeah, I truly believe this is our opportunity. This is our chance. Our country is morally decayed from the core, and this is our opportunity to just take a strong stand for Idaho and start moving in the other direction. And I get so tired of hearing the courts. The courts can have any opinion they want. The courts do not have an enforcement arm. For us to bow down to these court orders is ridiculous. The fact that Idaho passed back in 2014 Senate Bill 1332 that said they will stand up against the federal, they called it the Federal Firearm and Magazine Enforcement Act, that they would stand up to the feds if they came for our guns. Really, we're not going to do that for babies, but we're going to do it for guns.
Well said.
We just need to take a stand on this one.
Well, we're going to have you stick around we've got news coming up at 8 o'clock, and we'll take a few more minutes and continue this conversation. Just to let you know, I'm going to grab a glass of water, my hourly refill. And so if you'd like to do the same, we've got about 5 minutes. Feel free to do that. But we'll pick up the conversation with State Representative Heather Scott after the news at 8 o'clock. In the meantime, we're at a balmy 20. Hey, you could be in Fargo. It's 7:58. Coming up on 7:59, and news, too, from Fox and a local update from Benita Baeza. Bill Cowley with you on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX. So I have an email from a listener in Minidoka County this morning, and she writes, "My husband says Heather should replace our dead bottom congressional representatives." Although the email does not say bottom, fill in the blank. Our guest is State Representative Heather Scott. We're at 19. It's coming up on 7 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Cowley with you, too, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Representative Scott is one of the co-sponsors of the Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act, which would ban abortion in the state of Idaho. And it got a lot of initial attention, and then media seems to be tiptoeing around this one because I'm sure that they're aware that if they talk about it, it probably will help promote the bill, especially in a relatively conservative state like Idaho. Representative, got to ask you a quick question here because I know that you've had some issues with some of your colleagues, even in your own party, and I have a feeling that a lot of them, while they talk a good game when it comes to being pro-life, if it came down to an opportunity to spite anyone from what I guess they called you sometimes the Six Pack or the Liberty Caucus, that they would try to find a way to wriggle out of voting for this bill for that particular reason. Are you concerned about that at all?
I'm really not. I mean, this is literally going to come down to a choice on where you believe life begins, and are you willing to stand for that life? And I think it's an individual decision every legislator is going to have to make. And so I think when it comes to life, I just don't see the political games happening for this. People have been very sincere, like where they stand on this. And I think this bill, it basically cuts to the core of the issue is it life or is it not life? And so that's kind of, and are we going to act as a sovereign state and enforce our own laws, or are we going to continually bow down to the courts? So I don't know that when it comes to life, people get serious because they have strong convictions, and I don't see political games in this one. Maybe I'm naive, but I just don't see it. I think most people are sincere with their feelings on this issue.
It's been interesting.
Whether it's their side.
Well, it's been interesting that I haven't even seen a lot of response from, I occasionally will talk to Matt Erpelding and some of the folks in the caucus from the other side, and they will reflect on various bills. Now, Matt is, as I understand it, he's a Roman Catholic. So technically, I would think he would get behind a bill like this, but people like him have been relatively silent about it. That does not surprise me. It probably doesn't surprise you as well.
Yeah, I've had some conversations with a couple. I'm actually on the side of the offices that I'm with the Democrats, and some like, hey, tell me when that bill's coming up so I can testify against it. And I was like, I know you will. And others, others have been real sincere, like, we really need to talk about this. The woman has the right to choose, and so I think people are all coming from different areas. They know where I stand on this issue, and I think, I think we need to have the conversations. I think people need to make a choice.
Interesting you mentioned that, because Brian Zollinger was in Representative Rubel's office the other morning, and they were listening to me talk about this very bill and this issue. And Brian commented, he said, it's interesting to sit here and look at her expressions.
Yeah.
But they have to know how people feel. I mean, they get feedback too, and they have to know that even though some of them may represent a very urban and sometimes liberal district, they have to understand that if they get out, they know what people around the state of Idaho believe. They get that feedback just as much as you do.
Right. Well, and the other part about this too is if you look in the Idaho state law and you just put all the religious convictions aside, our law is very clear. A child conceived but not yet born is to be deemed an existing person. And then it says the unlawful killing of a human being, including but not limited to a human embryo or fetus. So we define a child conceived as life. And so that right there, they have to deal with that. No matter what they see, that's what our law says. So they are justifying in their own minds, that an abortion is an acceptable means to kill a baby. And that's where we're at.
I want to point out, telephone number is 208-736-0300, and I believe we've got a caller or two who are looking to get in touch and have a question or comment for Representative Heather Scott, who was talking with us this morning about the Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act. We're coming up on 12 minutes after 8 o'clock, and we're at 20 this morning. Bill Cowley with you on Magic Valley this morning until 10 a.m. A lot going on, obviously, in Boise, and maybe part of the reason we haven't heard too much out of mainstream media on this is because they're clearly, you can only chase so many bills at one particular time. Is there any more tweaking you have to do on the bill, or is it, I know you've mentioned before you've got to have a new number assigned, but I would assume that it's pretty much standard. I mean, people can read it and understand exactly what it says.
Oh, yes. We just added a tiny little line to it yesterday, so I'll probably get a new draft back today. But the bill the heart of the bill does not change. It's very clear. It direct, and I don't know if I posted a draft, but I'll post it today once I get that next draft out. I'll post it. But it basically tells the legislative intent, and then it repeals our section of code that gives an exemption for murder for an abortion. So that's really, it doesn't, I don't even think besides the title of this bill, I don't think it even talks about abortion, because it talks about the intent, but it's not getting into the details. It's basically just getting rid of the exemption for murder.
We have a caller looking to join us, and caller, you're up next. You're on the air with State Representative Heather Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I love the bill that's up for vote here in Idaho. Just wanted to see what she thought about the bill in Florida that is that they're trying to pass, that's going to allow school districts to allow Bible study as an elective in every high school in Florida, and if that was something that could be done in Idaho as well.
I think we've got 6 or 7 states around the country working on that. Is that something that anyone here is talking about?
I have not heard it mentioned, and quite frankly, I have some strong opinions on the schools, and I really try to stay out of those conversations and let the people in those committees move that direction. I don't run a lot of school bills, if you maybe noticed.
Right, you're not on the education committee.
That's true. That is true. And so I think we're down a wrong trail with this Common Core and the agenda driven curriculum that bases it. So anytime we can get the truth into our schools with a Bible class, I think that's great. But don't be surprised if next thing you know, we see the Quran in the schools, which we're already seeing it anyway. But so sometimes I don't know. I'd have to see what the bill actually does, but there's always these unintended consequences. I know they do yoga in the schools, and that is part of the Buddhist. I think it's the Buddhist or the Hindus techniques of things. So I don't know. I think we're going to get into some danger when we start bringing in actual religion into the schools, even though they're teaching secular humanism. So I would be careful. I would be careful with that. The question is, do you want the teachers that you have now teaching the Bible to your kids? And that's where I would look into it a little deeper.
Okay. We've got another caller looking to join us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with State Representative Heather Scott.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. Thanks for taking my call. Been a while. I really don't have a question for, more of a comment. But after what New York has done and some of these other states with this abortion thing, I cannot see how Idaho can't put like a first foot forward. We're gonna outlaw this stuff. If you abort a baby, it is murder. I don't care if it was conceived yesterday. It's a baby. It's a live human being. Yeah, the heart's not beating, but it is a human being. And these people they're out here saying, well, it's not a baby till it's born, or we can't put somebody through having a baby mainly out of convenience, so it's okay to kill it. It's okay to tear the little thing apart. Can you imagine the horror that baby goes through? It's in its mother, it's warm, it's cushy, it's all sucking its thumb and growing, and things are great. And then some bastard comes along with a wire or a hook or however the hell they do it and tear that little thing out of there. How can a politician have a conscience and even say to themselves, well, we really don't want to cross that path? We're talking human beings. When that shooter down in Vegas killed 58 people, people were up in arms. People were mad, and they should have been. I was too. But they tried to figure out excuses for an action like that. Well, when it comes to an abortion, there's no excuse. Well, they set out, when that mother lays down on that table, they set out, somebody's going to die.
Butch, I'll have to cut you off there because we got about a minute. I'll allow the representative to comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on. It's absurd, and we continue to allow it. And so that's why I'm bringing this bill forward. I think enough is enough. We need to take a stand. Idaho needs to take a stand. What are we talking about? We're talking about 1,300 people in our state that are getting aborted. 1,300 babies a year that are being aborted in our state. If you had 1,300 puppies, like an earlier caller said, would we have a teacher that got in trouble for feeding a puppy to a turtle? A snapping turtle in this state. Where do we draw the line here? So I'm right with you, caller.
I want to thank him for chiming in. We got about a minute. For people, you mentioned, of course, a lot of the stuff you'll have posted at Facebook. You've got a couple of different Facebook presences, right?
Yes, I do. I have Heather Scott. I have Rep Heather Scott. And then I have a campaign page, which would be Heather Scott for North Idaho.
So generally you're posting to all of them, right?
Randomly, yes. So I try to keep up with Facebook. It's really hard, working down here that we don't have staff, as you know. And,
right.
So it's really hard to keep up with Facebook. And so I'm randomly on there. During session, it's mostly Representative Heather Scott and Heather Scott. I try to hit those two. So that's the two I mostly post on.
Well,
I put a video on there of kind of that talks about how this bill, what the language actually does.
Well, I want to thank you much for your time, and let's keep in touch, because as this thing moves forward, we'll want to talk to you again.
Great, and I will get a draft posted online so people can see it hopefully later today.
All right, super. State Representative Heather Scott, thank you very much for joining us this morning, talking about what is called the Idaho Abortion Human Rights Act. She is the co-sponsor of that bill. We're at 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Cowley with you on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com.